All right, Church of America, time for calling out. Democrats versus Republicans. Who's right, who is wrong? Is that really what you think this is? Do you think that we are a nation of left versus right and of Democrat versus Republican? Because many of the Democrats that I know that are in my church or out of my church agree with many of the things that my Republican friends and Republican church members say. This is not about party lines. Our nation is not about party lines. We're about coming to consensus. We are a group of different perspectives. We have states that are unique in the world. The states that are in the Midwest that are run off of farmland versus a thriving city like New York City or San Francisco or Los Angeles. There are people that have very, very different needs because they are living very different lives. We need to respect and honor one another while we disagree. So, if you're going to call out a party line, I tend to be a nonconformist, and I'm going to start saying both sides of this equation. Everybody is talking about the GOP, which, if you're not into politics, that's fine. But everybody is talking about the Republican Party and how dare they side with a certain person, how dare they back violent behaviors, etc. These are sweeping statements that do not represent that side of individuals. On the other side of it, I see folks calling out Democrats, saying that all leftists are socialists who are trying to brainwash our children and bring our nation to its knees. This is not who we are, guys. This is not who we are. We can find common ground, I guarantee it. So, I'm not going to bring you the common ground. I'm asking you to go out into your neighborhood, into your workplace, and have conversations with people, because there are things happening on both sides of this equation. Ready for the difficult part? This act of insurrection that you're calling it has been happening all summer under the names of BLM on the other side of things. So when you back one act of violence and you watch a city burn, literal businesses burning to the ground, cars lit on fire, people being pushed by a mob, and then you look at what happened in the Capitol building and the horrors of that scenario, it's the same thing. The same thing is happening on both sides. So neither party should be condoning violence. Neither party should be condoning this behavior, because it leads to chaos and it leads to distraction. This is something that is pulling away from the real issues that people want to talk about, because as a whole, the American nation is not divided in this. They're not violent. You don't have a group of people who are doing a military takeover. That is happening right now in another part of the world. There was a military coup. So if you're going to call something a coup, you need to be very careful of the words that you're using. That is not what happened. I'm not condoning anything about either side of this. Both were incorrect. They were both wrong in the way that they approached this. So nobody has the right to harm anybody else. Nobody has the right to destroy the property of anybody else. That's why there are laws in this nation against that. That's why people who break those laws need to be brought to justice, brought before the court, so that they can be tried fairly and it can be heard whether their behavior was justified. Now we're going to have to talk about the definitions of things, because I am hearing words being thrown around that are not what they really are. People are talking about acts of violence and terror. And I'm going to tell you something. As a person who watched 9/11 take place, I cannot imagine that you would call what happened in Washington, D.C. a terrorist act. Was it stupid? Yes. It does need to be condemned. I am not saying anything about that. What I am saying is that your verbiage, the words that you are using to describe it, are incorrect. And I also need to say that it's not a terrorist act by the other side either. When there is Black Lives Matter campaign, when someone is trying to make their voice heard, they need to be heard and they need to be loved. Black lives don't just matter, they are absolutely precious. Absolutely precious. We need to go a step further to show love to one another and respect and honor to one another. But that does not mean that in order for someone's voice to be heard, it is okay for them to act in violence and riot. Whether you call it a riot or not, I'm noticing that for some reason what happened in Washington, D.C. is being called a riot, and yet what happened in the cities like Portland, Oregon, is not being called a riot. Where is the dividing line? What is the behavior? Look up the word and use it properly. If you do not know the word, if it is a hot button word, try avoiding it. Try not using it for a while. It's probably not helping anybody. People say these words and it becomes automatically, I'm going to line myself on this side of the equation because you use the word riot. Or I'm going to line myself on that side of the equation because you use the word protest. Guys, these words are just words. You don't have to be offended by them. We have talked about this in previous videos, but you don't have to take offense at the word that someone is using, and you could respectfully use a word of your own to de-escalate the situation. Why is it that it has to come to fighting? Why does it have to come to shouting, screaming disagreements, or just shutting down and not listening to people? All these voices are valid. People are hurting. That is the reason that they are acting in this manner. On the one side of things, you have a group of people who do not feel heard. They feel that they are misrepresented in the government, in their own nation, in their own cities, in their own towns. That's not right. Folks who are black, brown, any other color need to be respected. We need to validate their experience, because if we don't acknowledge that that is happening for some people, then they're not going to hear us because we're not coming from a place of love. And the same thing goes for the other side, guys. If you went down to the Capitol and you were trying to make your voice heard because you really have a concern about the elections that happened in our state, in our country, that you feel that you were marginalized, that you were not listened to, that the courts did not hear your case, guys, do you not see that you are both experiencing the exact same thing? Everybody that's supporting Black Lives Matter wants to be heard. Everybody that supported the peaceful protests, I'm not talking about what happened inside of that building, I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of people that I personally watched on the news, walking peacefully, speaking to one another, not being violent. They were protesting something that they wanted to be heard about. And if you are ignoring that, then you are ignoring a human being who is in pain. How dare you walk past them? Didn't you hear the tale of the Good Samaritan? You know, one was a priest, walked right around the guy, watched that he was hurting, walked right around him. Government official walked right past him, didn't want to look at him because he knew he was in pain. And who helps him? The one person that probably had no business helping anyone at all, the one who had probably been walked past his entire life, recognized the hurt in that other person. We need to recognize the hurt in one another. It does not matter which side of the aisle you stand on. It does not matter which side of the issue you stand on. Listen to one another. Don't listen to speak. It's not just to respond and make your opinion known, because your opinion is not the most important opinion. It is to listen, to understand their perspective. What do they need? What is the real issue? Is there common ground that you can come to? Let's think about that. Let's settle this. This dispute is between brothers. We are from the same nation. We are from the same background. We need to recognize one another as part of the same family. of Americans. Please, please be nice. Listen, hear, do, act, be kind, and let's make a lasting change. Lasting changes are possible, not if you're all by yourself. If you think that you are alone, then you're not going to be a part of a movement that can make change. Let's be positive and hear one another. Let's hear one another speak. I'll talk to you guys soon.